Hi guys, this week we're going to talk about your midterm, and I think most of you are doing a good job because the average grade is pretty high, higher than my expectation. So this week, you may notice that some questions are pretty easy, and I will identify some difficult questions that there are some common mistakes, and then go through other easy questions quickly. Okay, so this is the answer for your midterm. First one was the definition of the GDP, and second one is that was the definition of the real GDP. So the difference is that the GDP is a market value of all final goods and services produced within a country within one period of time. And the real GDP is actually the sum of all quantities produced by produced multiplied by the base year's prices. Okay, so this is a difference. One is the market value, and the other one is the quantity times base year's prices. Okay, let's look at the 3 and 4. So if the inflation rate is 10% and the base year's price indexes is 120, then what would be the CPI in 2022? So this question is just using the definition of inflation rate by using the CPI. Okay, so it's just 120 times 1 plus 10%. So then you can get the CPI in 2022. Okay. And also for it, the homework question, the definition of unemployment rate is just using the unemployed person divided by the total labor force. And what is the total labor force? It's just the employed persons plus the unemployed persons. Okay, then question 5, actually, most of us, this question is a question that some students make common mistakes. So let's explain why it should be. Okay, so I think most of you uh, can understand. Here we are going to use GDP equals C and I and G and net exports, right? So here you know GDP is 100, C is C don't know, and I 40, and government expenditure 660. So here you can get that the net exports equals negative C. So the key point is that consumption could be always positive. Remember that if you want to live, if you want to live, of course you need to buy something, okay, to satisfy at least the basic life requirements. So C is naturally positive. So this question, you can get the net export is negative C. So this one would be the negative value. Okay, so this is the question that maybe most of you are pretty confused about it. We do not have the assumption that C is 0. Okay. Okay, so question 6, the increase in return to scale is C because the sum of the power is 1.5, which is larger than 1. And 7, in equilibrium, the marginal product of the MPL equals to the real wage. And here I think 8 and 9, you can easily solve this because this one is just the homework question. So let's look at 11 because some of you made some mistakes for the 11. Okay, so here we have the net exports 0. The national saving S is $200 and Y is the national income, and taxes T equals to 80. The personal consumption C is 80. So here you can see that all the answers are about the government expenditure. You need to determine what is government surplus or deficit. So S, including the personal private saving and the public saving, where the private saving is just Y minus T minus C, and the public saving is T minus G. So here we can simplify that S equals to Y minus C minus G. So you can get that G equals 20, right? And what is the government expenditure or surplus? Is just equals T minus G, where you know what is G, right? You know what is T. So it's just 80 minus 20. So here you can have the government surplus of 60. So this question is also the homework question, homework 2, okay? But maybe some of you are making mistakes. And 12, this is just the inverse. The investment is the flow and the capital is the stock. And also 30, the GDP deflator is defined as the nominal GDP divided by real GDP, okay? And if the consumer price is 100, then the year must be always the base year. No, because maybe sometimes the year which is not the base year, the CPI is also 100, but we cannot have that conclusion that if the CPI is 100, then it's a base year. This is not true, but if this is a base year, then the CPI is 100. This is correct. Okay. And 40, this is true. This is false, because if you can have the factor payment to the board exceed the factor payment from a board, then GNP would smaller than GDP. Okay, because what is GDP? The market value of all final goods and services produced within one country within one period. So this one is actually the geographic concept, and just this one is the you can think the nationality concept. Okay, and 15 CPI may overstate the inflation rate because the overall prices could go up or go down. So actually, why this is false? Because the real reason is not about the price. It's also about some structure bias, like the substitution bias, or new goods bias, or quality change bias, not the price change. Okay, there's no causal relationship between the price and the CPI. Okay, and the next one, I think you can answer this, because from 2 to 3, the increment is 15. So the marginal product of the third worker is 15 pesos. And 17 is the increase in return to scale. And you can have a try, because we already discussed it during the our discussions. And the real wage equals to the nominal wage times the price level. So this is not true, because the this equation we don't have it. Okay, what we have is that the nominal wage equals the the wage per hour times the labor hours. So, but we don't have this one. Okay. And if you want to have the relationship between the real wage and the nominal wage, it that just inverse it. Okay. The nominal one equals to the real one times P. So as you can see that some false statements is just you need to convert the statement, then that is will be true. And suppose the nominal wage is 10, price level 4, marginal product of labor is 2, then what would be done? So you can compare the nominal wage and the increment. So what would be the increment? It would be 4 times 2, right? So here, now the nominal wage is actually higher. So you need to hire less labor, okay? Because now you are paying more to the labor force. And the spending on the investment is negatively related to the real interest rate. Yes, this is true. So you can imagine that because you're saving in your saving account, you can think this is the investment. Suppose that the interest rate is higher than before, then you have more motivation to uh to you have more motivation to have let me check. So here, if the real interest rate is higher, then the cost of borrowing is higher, right? If the cost of the borrowing is higher, if you are the firm owner and if you want to borrow money from the market, then what would you do? Then you can think that the cost is higher. Maybe you have less motivation to do the investment. Okay. So actually now you have the investment had the negative relationship with the real interest rate. Okay. And part two is actually, I don't think I need to emphasize this because all of you, uh, almost all of you got the full grade. So I think it'd be very good. Okay. So this is your midterm. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask me. And that's